Jimmy Haslam is watching his team's value drop in real time. What started with Shedeur Sanders riding the bench has now ballooned into a full-scale economic disaster for Cleveland Browns. Major sponsors tied to Sanders' image, companies that build entire campaigns around his marketability, are quietly pulling back. Contracts are being reviewed, ad spends are being slashed, and all of it goes back to one decision: letting Joe Flacco start again, while the franchise's most bankable asset stood helmet in hand on the sidelines. The collapse was immediate. As soon as Sanders was benched against the Detroit Lions, nearly 40% of viewers dropped out of the broadcast. That's not a ratings dip, that's an exodus. Fans didn't just tune out. They canceled NFL Plus subscriptions, demanded refunds, and took to social media with boycotts and protest plans. Inside league offices, the alarm bells started ringing. Primetime games don't just lose audiences like that unless something's fundamentally broken. Now, Kevin Stefanski, the man defending this chaos, is clinging to his role while the organization frays beneath him. His public insistence that Flacco is the guy isn't just unpopular, it's corrosive. It's widening the rift between the locker room and the coaching staff, dividing ownership and pushing front office staff toward full-scale reevaluation. Internally, confidence in Stefanski is unraveling fast, and the tension between football logic and business consequences has never been clearer. Haslam, meanwhile, is stuck in a lose-lose scenario. Keep Stefanski and risk permanently alienating a fan base that's already walking away in droves. Fire him and admit the franchise has no clear long-term direction. And the league? They're watching it all unfold with growing discomfort. If Cleveland can't field its most popular player during the highest-viewed game slots, broadcasters and advertisers will start demanding changes. Fast. The real damage isn't just on the field. It's in Cleveland's economy. Downtown bars and local businesses are seeing fewer crowds on game day. Ticket resale prices are plummeting. Stadium attendance projections for the rest of the season have cratered. What used to be one of the most loyal fan bases in the NFL has become volatile, angry, and more dangerously disengaged. And through it all, Sanders hasn't made a scene. He hasn't lashed out, but his demeanor says enough. Cold, controlled, detached. His reps are now quietly evaluating the situation, measuring how long they're willing to sit through a franchise that's dysfunctional. Sources close to his camp have confirmed one thing. They're not just watching, they're planning. This isn't a PR crisis. This is a structural implosion. The Browns are bleeding revenue, trust, and credibility all at once. If leadership doesn't act immediately, they may not just lose Sanders. They may lose the one thing Cleveland's always had: an unbreakable fan base. The Cleveland Browns are no strangers to controversy.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Over the years, fans have watched this franchise survive fumbled draft picks, blown leads, locker room drama, and constant leadership turnover. But what's happening right now, this moment of full-on implosion, is on a completely different level. It's not just about losing a game. It's not just about a quarterback decision. It's about a franchise that has officially lost the trust of its fans, the confidence of its sponsors, the support of its media partners, and quite possibly the patience of the NFL itself. Because when Shedeur Sanders was benched again in favor of Joe Flacco during a nationally televised primetime game, the reaction wasn't just vocal outrage. It was measurable collapse. Within minutes, viewership dropped nearly 40%, one of the most immediate and severe audience drops in recent memory. That's not just a dip in ratings. That's an exodus. Fans didn't just protest online. They left. They turned off their TVs, canceled subscriptions, flooded social media with fury, and launched boycotts. People who supported this team through decades of disappointment finally hit their limit. They didn't just dislike the decision. They stopped believing in the entire operation. And you know what? They're not wrong. This wasn't a one-off mistake. It was an experiment that backfired. This was the Browns doubling down on dysfunction. Shedeur Sanders wasn't benched because of injury. He wasn't benched because of locker room issues. He was benched in favor of a 39-year-old quarterback with no long-term future, in a move so disconnected from reality that it sent shockwaves through every level of the organization and beyond. The fallout has been fast and brutal. Let's start with the business side. Corporate sponsors who had invested in Sanders' brand, betting big on his star power and national appeal, are now quietly pulling back. Deals are being paused. Campaigns shelved. Some sponsors are reportedly reworking their contracts or exiting entirely. This isn't about football. It's about marketability. And when you sideline the one player who fans actually care about, who brings ratings and relevance to a historically struggling franchise, your sponsors take the hit right alongside your viewership. And they don't forget it. The Browns didn't just damage a player relationship. They undermined their financial foundation. And then there's the league reaction. And this is where it gets even worse. The NFL isn't built to withstand this kind of chaos in prime time. The league depends on its star players to drive engagement. Sanders is that star. He brings in viewers who don't even follow Cleveland. He adds value to broadcasts. He's the storyline the league wanted to promote. And now that storyline's been benched. The immediate consequence? Broadcast partners and NFL officials are reconsidering Cleveland's presence in primetime matchups. Behind the scenes, discussions have already started about pulling Browns games from national windows and replacing them with more stable, watchable teams. That's not speculation. That's business. If your games are losing half their audience live, networks don't wait around. And the NFL doesn't tolerate a franchise sabotaging its ratings model. This could have broader consequences than anyone in Cleveland seems to grasp. If the Browns lose their national TV spots, that affects next year's ad revenue, the team's exposure, merchandising numbers, and their ability to attract free agents. And speaking of players, Shedeur Sanders has handled this entire disaster with restraint. He hasn't gone to the media. He hasn't made it about himself. But his body language, his public posture, and the silence from his reps, all signs point to one thing. He's reevaluating everything. You don't treat a franchise quarterback, one the league wants to promote, like this and expect him to stick around. Sanders has remained professional, but the trust has clearly been shaken. His team is watching this unfold in real time, and make no mistake, if things don't change fast, he will explore his options. Because Sanders doesn't need the Browns. But the Browns? They desperately need him. He is the bridge between irrelevance and national attention. He's the reason the team had any marketing momentum this season. He's the face on the posters, the highlight reels, the press coverage. You lose him, and you lose everything. And let's be clear, this isn't about performance. Sanders wasn't benched because he failed. He was benched because of internal politics, conservative decision-making, and a coaching staff unwilling to evolve. Head coach Kevin Stefanski's defense of the move has only made things worse. His authority, already in question, is now under fire from every direction. His public support for Flacco, despite the backlash, the ratings collapse and internal tension, has made him a lightning rod for criticism. And ownership? Nowhere to be found. Jimmy Haslam has said nothing. No reassurance to fans. No commitment to Sanders. No explanation for the coaching staff's decisions. Just silence. And that silence is being interpreted exactly the way you'd expect, as cowardice, as disengagement, as indifference. And while the leadership stays quiet, the fans are gone. You don't get them back easily. Loyalty like Cleveland's doesn't grow overnight. And when you break it this badly, you don't recover with a few tweets and a halftime ceremony. The people who walked away Sunday night didn't just leave the game, they left the brand. And the Browns are now in danger of becoming unwatchable, not just because of performance, because of principle, because they're making decisions that signal to fans, sponsors, and players that nothing is changing. And that's the biggest problem. There's no plan, no clarity, no leadership, no path forward. Just a franchise clinging to a veteran quarterback while their future sits on the sideline. Networks pull back, sponsors pull out, and fans close the door. And still, no response. Here's the reality. Unless the Browns act now, this situation will define their season and possibly the next few years. There's a narrow window left to fix this. But it starts with doing what they should have done weeks ago. Start Sanders. Own the mistake. Issue a public statement. Recommit to your star. Fire Stefanski, if you have to. Make changes that actually mean something. Because right now, this isn't sustainable. Not financially, not culturally, not competitively. And if Sanders walks, if he decides his franchise can't be trusted, you don't just lose a quarterback. You lose your future. Cleveland fans deserve better. The league demands better. The sponsors expect better. And Shedeur Sanders has earned better. So what happens next? That's on the Browns now. Let us know in the comments. What should Cleveland do? Is it time for a leadership overhaul? Should Sanders force a trade? And is there any way to repair the damage that's already been done? Make sure to subscribe for full breakdowns of the biggest collapses in sports, pop culture, and beyond. Because when it comes to self-destruction, no one's doing it quite like the Cleveland Browns right now. There are implosions. And then there's whatever the Cleveland Browns are doing right now. The word meltdown doesn't even feel big enough. What started with one tone-deaf quarterback decision has spiraled into a total franchise-level crisis. And the silence at the top? It's not just frustrating, it's damning. At the center of this collapse is Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback the team was supposed to be building around. Instead, he's been benched, twice, in favor of Joe Flacco. A quarterback who's played fine in stretches, sure, but represents the past in a league that's all about the future. That one move triggered a domino effect so brutal. It's now threatening the Browns' viability on and off the field. Let's go back to the viewership collapse, because that's where it all started to unravel publicly. The second Sanders was benched in their Sunday night matchup against the Lions, the numbers nosedived, and not by a little. We're talking 40%, a drop that stunned broadcasters, advertisers, and NFL executives alike. Viewership during a nationally televised game doesn't fall off a cliff like that, unless something so egregiously off-putting happens that fans bail mid-game. That's exactly what this was, a mass rejection of leadership. Viewers didn't just check out. They took their wallets with them. Subscriptions were canceled. Fans swore off merchandise. Some are even organizing boycotts. And once that kind of exodus starts, it's almost impossible to reverse. Let's be very clear. This wasn't about Shedeur's stats. It wasn't about performance-based decisions. It was about trust. Trust that had been slowly, painfully rebuilt over the past few seasons, and then shattered in a single night. And this is where the Browns' internal dysfunction really starts to show. Because when that kind of backlash explodes, when fans leave, sponsors panic, and national headlines turn toxic, you expect someone in leadership to take control, to step up, to address the crisis. But in Cleveland, nothing. No statement. No adjustment. No accountability. Head coach Kevin Stefanski has publicly defended his decision, citing leadership experience and other vague intangibles. But none of it holds water when your fan base has revolted and your most marketable asset is on the bench. His authority is slipping fast, not just with fans, but reportedly within the organization. Ownership, led by Jimmy Haslam, has remained completely silent. And that silence is now its own kind of statement, one that's being heard loud and clear by sponsors, league officials, and most importantly, the players. Because what message does it send when your franchise quarterback is benched twice, your fans abandon you, your reputation tanks, and the owner says nothing? It tells everyone, we don't have a plan. And that's the real issue. Not just that the Browns made a bad decision, but that they keep doubling down on it, with no evidence that they understand the consequences. And the consequences are piling up fast. Financial fallout. Sponsorships built around Sanders? Crumbling. Brands that saw him as a new face of Cleveland football are already reworking their marketing strategies. Why? Because you can't sell a bench quarterback. And you really can't sell a franchise that seems determined to alienate the very fans it depends on for survival. Broadcast partners are livid. That 40% viewership crash during a primetime slot doesn't just affect Cleveland. It impacts national ad revenue, league scheduling models, and network negotiations. If one team's decision can tank an entire game's ratings, the league has a problem. And that problem is the Browns. It's why NFL executives are now actively discussing schedule changes. Quiet conversations are happening about pulling Cleveland from future national windows. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. The league can't afford to risk another ratings disaster. Not when brands are watching. Not when advertising dollars are on the line. The Shedeur-Sanders dilemma. Through it all, Shedeur has remained composed, professional, focused. He hasn't called out the coaching staff. He hasn't made veiled comments in the media. But the signs are there. The frustration in his body language. The tension in his sideline demeanor. The silence from his camp. His representatives are watching. His value isn't just tied to Cleveland. It extends across the entire NFL. He's young, marketable, talented, and still under contract. But if this franchise keeps sidelining him while the team collapses, the conversation shifts. Fast. Because Shedeur-Sanders doesn't need Cleveland. But Cleveland desperately needs him. He's the reason fans had hope. He's the reason national broadcasts gave Cleveland airtime. He's the future. And now he's thinking twice about tying that future to a franchise that clearly doesn't know what to do with him. If he decides to request a trade, that's it. The Browns lose the last thread of legitimacy they have left. And if you think that doesn't impact the league as a whole, you're wrong. Because once the NFL's youngest stars start looking at Cleveland as a toxic destination, the damage compounds. Free agents stay away. Agents steer their clients elsewhere. Draft picks pray not to be selected. The franchise becomes radioactive. Internal collapse. And that brings us to the internal fractures. Reports from inside the organization suggest that Stefanski's position is no longer secure. Ownership is under pressure. From sponsors, from broadcasters, from league executives. And while nothing has been announced publicly, it's becoming clear. Something has to give. Either Stefanski goes or the Browns risk losing not just games, but their entire foundation. Because this isn't about a quarterback controversy anymore. It's about how the Browns have handled the biggest opportunity they've had in decades and fumbled it in front of the world. There's still time to course correct, but that window is shrinking. If ownership wants to salvage anything, they need to act now. That means reinstating Sanders. That means issuing a real statement. That means holding people accountable. And yes, that might mean firing Stefanski. Because if nothing changes, sponsors will leave permanently. Fans won't return. And Sanders will be gone the second his camp finds a viable escape route. Final breakdown. Let's recap the facts. Viewership dropped 40% after Sanders was benched, mid-game. Fans canceled subscriptions, protested, and openly called for leadership change. Sponsors and broadcasters are pulling back, reconsidering investments. NFL leadership is considering scheduling changes to protect ratings. Sanders remained professional, but signs indicate he is evaluating his future. Stefanski's authority is eroding, both inside and outside the building. Ownership has remained publicly silent, creating a leadership vacuum. And all of it points to one undeniable truth. The Browns are on the brink of total collapse, not just competitively, but economically, culturally, and reputationally. So what happens next? That's up to Jimmy Haslam and the decision-makers inside that building. They can own the disaster and pivot, or they can continue down this path, watching everything fall apart piece by piece. Because right now, it's not about a single quarterback decision anymore. It's about survival. At this point, the Cleveland Browns are running out of lifelines, and fast. What started as a controversial coaching decision has turned into an organizational firestorm that now threatens the very foundation of the franchise. The longer they wait to respond, the worse it gets. The clock isn't ticking anymore, it's blaring. And yet, leadership remains silent. Kevin Stefanski's stubborn commitment to Joe Flacco over Shedeur-Sanders has now gone from questionable to catastrophic. The fans have spoken with their remotes, their wallets, and their social feeds. The 40% viewership drop wasn't a blip. It was a blunt message. You benched the wrong guy and we're out. And still, no course correction. Let's be honest here. Cleveland fans have endured just about every type of dysfunction over the last 2 decades. But this is different. This isn't just losing. It's losing while actively ignoring the future. While benching the only quarterback who brought any excitement or identity to this team. While alienating a fan base that already lives on the edge of patience. The emotional cost is real. But the financial cost? It's lethal. Sponsors are bailing. National networks are already treating the Browns like a liability. And the NFL, which doesn't tolerate ratings disaster for long, is now reportedly weighing options. The phrase relegation from prime time isn't a hypothetical anymore. It's a looming reality. Because when your decisions start costing the league money, the league doesn't care about your depth chart politics. They care about stability. They care about ratings. They care about the product. And right now, the Browns are damaging all three. And through it all, Shedeur Sanders remains the only one showing leadership. He's not tweeting cryptic messages. He's not going to the media. He's keeping his head down, showing up, and supporting his teammates. But make no mistake, he's not just staying quiet. He's watching. His team is watching. His brand partners are watching. And if this continues, he won't need to ask for a trade. The offers will come to him. Because Shedeur is marketable. He's poised. He's exactly the type of player other franchises build around. But instead of doing that, Cleveland is wasting him and losing everything in the process. There's still one final play left. Start Sanders. Fire Stefanski. Rebuild the trust. But that window is closing. If the Browns wait much longer, they're not just risking the season. They're risking the future. So what do you think? Can Cleveland still recover? Or have they already lost too much? Sound off in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for the most in-depth breakdowns of sports disasters, celebrity PR nightmares, and every brand that can't stop setting itself on fire. Because when it comes to turning opportunity into chaos, nobody's doing it quite like the Cleveland Browns.